The 2026 Evergreen State Kit is here, celebrating soccer throughout Washington State. Featuring a bright green base with dark and light blue accents on the shoulders and sleeve cuffs, the kit will be paired with light blue shorts and socks. Inspired by the club's Forever Green and For Evergreen motto, the Evergreen State Kit embodies the spirit, texture, and landscapes of the Pacific Northwest. Continuing the club's long and proud tradition of Northwest inspiration, the Evergreen State Kit includes 52 sparks for the 52 mini pitches built in communities across Washington by the Ray Foundation. The lower corner is emblazoned with the Evergreen State in reference to Washington's historical nickname. Order yours today at lobbingscorchers.com/kit. That's lobbingscorchers.com/KIT. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Lobbing Scorchers Kickoff. I'm Ari, that's Nico, and we're going to be hanging out this morning, talking some Seattle Sounders and Major League Soccer. We got a lot to get to. We're going to be getting Nico's takes on this riveting 0-0 draw at Minnesota United that we witnessed yesterday at Allianz Field. And then we're going to be dishing out some grades for the 2026 season so far. The Seattle Sounders finally have a bit of respite from the road show, from the fixture congestion, from all these games. They're going into a bye week. They don't play again until April 4th at Houston. So I figured it would be a good time for a little stock check, see where we're at as far as position groups. We're going to be grading each position group and giving the team an overall grade through 7 all-competition matches, 5 league matches, and 2 Concacaf Champions Cup matches. Maybe talking a little bit of USMNT on the back end, and we're also going to be talking some CCC. Seattle's playing Tigres pretty soon in the quarterfinals, which is obviously a big deal. So do a little preview action of that as well. So Nico, a lot to get to, man. How are you doing here this morning? Thanks for tapping in.
What's going on, Ari? Lobbing Scorchers family. We're back here on a Monday morning. Maybe not feeling as great as we've had over the last couple of weekends. The Sounders getting a kind of a bleak performance there in Minnesota. Maybe a little toothless, but still they come across with a point. So I am curious to hear from you guys and see where you guys stand about this particular game. You have a 2-week period, right? 2-week break where you're not going to have any Sounders action, and maybe that can influence how strongly you feel about this Minnesota game. But I love the outline. I love what we're going to be talking about today. Of course, that's credit to my man Ari. So yeah, man, let's get to it.
2 weeks without a Sounders game. It's kind of weird to say that, you know, it's been just so many games, so much road travel, and it feels like, you know, it doesn't stop sometimes, but now we actually have a chance to catch our breath, recalibrate, lock back in. So yeah, let's get into it, Nico. Before we do that, shout out to our sponsors, Hakes and Ferments, Podium Menswear, and Full Pull Wines, and keep an eye out for some exciting sponsor news regarding this show that we will be unveiling at the start of next month in April. Like, comment, subscribe on all platforms, follow the YouTube, and if you're watching on YouTube, like the video. All right, Nico, I wanted to give you the floor to start it off here because, you know, I did the whole post-game show after this Minnesota United game yesterday. So I think all my takes are pretty much out there at this point. I don't know how many takes there are to give after a pretty nondescript 0-0 draw, but I did want to hear what you thought of it because, you know, it was a 0-0, and a 0-0 is never the most exciting thing in the world. I don't think anyone's ever come out of a 0-0 and been like, yeah, that was an awesome 0-0, except for the 2016 MLS Cup final. Now that I think about it, that was a 0-0 where I was like, hell yeah, you got the 0-0. That's exactly kind of actually how I wanted you to be playing that, but it's pretty rare that you say that. But, you know, on the flip side, they do get a point on the road against a Western Conference opponent in the middle of a crazy congested portion of the schedule where they also have about 27 injuries, no center backs. So I think there are ways to look at this 0-0 as maybe not the worst thing in the world. But Nico, what did you think of it? 0-0 at Allianz Field against a Minnesota United team that I don't think any of us think particularly highly of. But again, you know, circumstances could suggest that it was actually a pretty good result. So what did you think of both the performance and then also just the final result of getting out of Allianz with that draw?
Yeah, look, I have mixed feelings about the game, like probably most people do. On one hand, I want to not sound irrational when it comes to the expectations of the team. If you look at what the Sounders have been able to do over this road of visiting games and just road trip, basically, the overall performance and the overall results have been great. Maybe better than anyone would have thought. But when you just put this game in a vacuum, I feel like the Sounders left some points on the road. I mean, look, this Sounders team was better than Minnesota. And although I totally understand that perhaps a lot of the rotations that were brought into this game by Brian Smetzer and having Georgi start and having Petković start might have some to do with, minutes, maybe health for the future. And then I'm again, I don't even know how much I believe that, because Jesus hasn't had a 90-minute game, and you have been pulling him off pretty consistently. I don't think he looks tired. He played a whole lot of minutes last season, so that one was odd. Snyder B, sure, he played on Wednesday, but he is also another player that it's young that you brought on. I mean, I remember Ovid playing a whole lot more minutes when he was even younger than Snyder B. So it seemed odd because by having the 2-week break, you had the opportunity to take momentum into that break, really get an even better look at your, I guess, number one best starting 11. And then you had time to let those guys rest. So, I believe the guys are going to have 3 days off this week. Why not? Why not start your best team to guarantee you some points at Minnesota? Now, the contrast of that is, you want to get to see what you have out of Petković. You want to get to see what you have out of Georgi Minoungou. You're utilizing your depth. But the reality is, Ari, Lobbing Scorchers family, that without Ferreira on the field, the creativity of this team took a big hit. And the Sounders had a lot of possession with a lot of purposeness. They didn't look dangerous. They didn't look goal dangerous. There was nobody putting through balls. Georgi Minoungou had moments, but I think he needed to be fed behind the back line. Now, there wasn't a lot of space behind the back line. I get it. I understand it. I know the Minnesota plays that way. But there just needed to be a little bit more creativity on both the attacking movements and at times forcing the ball to certain spots in the pockets. Mid-range shooting was non-existent necessarily. Georgi Minoungou tried it a couple of times. There was a couple of block shots that came across in set pieces, but there was just a lot more need for an attacking player. And when you don't have your most influential, most productive attacking player on the field, I mean, you shouldn't be surprised that the team looked pretty bleak, pretty anemic when it came to their offensive strength. I do not want to dismiss how good this team has been defensively, though, right? When it comes to set piece defending, when it comes to just, overall, their overall ability to just have a lot of numbers behind the ball. And that's something that takes effort, takes quality, takes discipline to keep your shape, to track back adequately, to not get cut up a little bit too high. So also huge game for Andrew Thomas when his number was called. A couple of huge saves that keep this game at a 0, but there just wasn't that level of dominance that this team has had. And Christian Roldan talked about this team not controlling games after the Vancouver game. Can we say that they were in control of this one? Perhaps, if we look at possession, if we look at certain things, but I know for a fact that this team went into this game thinking this is a winnable game, and because of that lack of offensive power, in my opinion, you left some points on the road because this team had enough to win this game at Allianz.
1 like on the video, chat. That's unacceptable. I'm going to need everyone watching right now to go ahead and drop the like on the video if you're watching on YouTube. Come on. What are we doing? Let's pump it up there. One. Like
Come on now, guys. Let's get some likes.
Let's get some likes going. Nico, Noah wants to get your take on Georgi. He was saying this on the post game last night, but he's asking your opinion on it. He says, I don't get it. I don't get the whole hype. We were talking it through on the post game show, talking Georgi's performance. I thought he did. It was a mixed bag, like it has been a lot at times with Georgi. I did think he generated Seattle's 2 best chances of the game. He had the one where he hit Christian Roldan with the famous cutback, and Christian had a shot that got deflected and then went off the woodwork. And then the one that really could have been a goal, I thought, was because the Christian ones that was close to scoring, but it's not exactly the highest percentage chance I've ever seen. But then he had another one later in the game where he was looking for Osaze at the far post. He puts in a really nice cross. Osaze is crashing. He's about to get a tap in, and then Drake Callender dives, gets like a fingertip or just gets his hand to it before Osaze can get on the end of it, and no goal was to be scored. But 2 decently high-quality chances, but also I think we were talking about too, it's about the consistency. Sometimes, you get these moments, 1 or 2 a game, where he does something like that. He generates a good chance, and he is obviously very good at winning those 1v1s and creating those chances. I think we've all seen the metrics at this point that show how good he is at that type of chance generation. But you could say it was just not the kind of all-around consistently dangerous effort that you would want to see. So what did you think, Nico? What did you think of Georgi in this one?
I thought that he had moments, and I thought that he was the one player that looked dangerous off the dribble. I understand why that might not look as clear because Georgi has a very unorthodox way of handling his position, but it doesn't mean that it's not effective. And there are moments that he's kind of in 2 minds. He wants to be patient with the ball. He wants to drop back it. He wants to keep possession. And then he has that instinct to want to just get to the end line and have the type of crosses that he did a couple of times to create opportunities. But Georgi Minoungou is the type of winger that needs the system to be working for him a bit and working at its best. And I think we can all look at this game and say that whether it was in transition or in possession, this team looked a bit off. They did not look in sync. There were passing patterns that at moments, as always, every single game this season, remind us of what they can do in possession when everybody's moving the ball adequately. But it was just a bit slow. And a lot of that, in my opinion, once again, has to do with the lack of creativity. And although Albert Rusnak has been fine playing that number 10 position, I do believe that he's gotten used to having a guy like Jesus Ferreira that's going to be going a little bit deeper, picking up the ball in certain pockets, being the guy that puts line-breaking passes. And Georgi benefits off of that. A quick switch of the point of attack, that's what you want to see out of Georgi Minoungou. You want to get him isolated with a defender. I will say that Jefferson Diaz and Duncan did a good job at just bracing him a bit and not allowing him to get on the ball comfortably. And you saw times where Georgi Minoungou wanted to go and that he saw Jefferson Diaz kind of backing up the defender that he's working with, and then him just kind of dropping back, passing that ball negatively. So I do think that there is a credit to what Minnesota did to limit Georgi Minoungou, but I do understand the criticism because at times you want that winger to have more influence in the game and not have to be played for or being given, be needing to have certain moments. But that's what you get out of Georgi Minoungou. That's the reason why he isn't necessarily your your starter, and I think he has been growing. I think he's been learning, but I wouldn't say he had a bad game. I thought that, as you mentioned, he was probably the most dangerous player on the field. You might not see that in the stats because in order for him to get to certain positions, you have to force balls. You have to make a bad pass. You have to get beat off a dribble. Not every single time, because there was a couple of very easy giveaways by Georgi Minoungou in this particular game. But again, it's the good with the bad, and it's how much can you get on those good moments from Georgi. But I don't think this was about Georgi. I think this was about an attacking third that just wasn't clicking. I think Osaze and Rosario had another difficult game in this one. And without other players being able to get behind and being a lot more defiant on the ball, it almost puts this big magnifying glass on Osaze, which at times can be unfair because of the work that he does. But it's just not good enough. And that's the reality.
Yeah, with Georgi, it's one of those things where, he and Osaze are literally 0.2 inches from linking up for a goal on that one. And if they had linked up for a goal on that one, I think the conversation's probably totally different. We're sitting here saying, they linked up for that. Probably would have been the game winner. Honestly, if they had linked up for that, we would be sitting here saying, wow, they got the game winning goal. Like Georgi stock up, Osaze finally. So, I don't want those 0.2 inches to kind of dictate how we think about it. I think that the performance can be thought of relatively in the same way, honestly, if they had scored that, even though they didn't score that. So yeah, but I do understand why people want to see more consistency there, and hopefully he gets enough run. I still want to see him get enough run, maybe in this super sub duty, to see if he can get there. I still think he's a developing player, and you do see the exciting flashes, but it does feel like, I get it. It does feel like the same conversation over and over where we say, oh, we see the exciting flashes. Let's see more. Let's see if we can get it more consistently. And it feels like it hasn't quite got there yet. But he's also a guy who still, frankly, hasn't gotten a lot of minutes. So, yeah, mixed bag. Rob says,
before you throw that one up, I wanted to remind the audience about something that I thought, and I love this from Freddie Juarez, that he always wants to provide us some of that insight and knowledge of the game. And if there's something that stuck with me about one of the press conferences that we had prior to the Vancouver game, was that he mentioned how easy it is to have reference on white players when you have a 5-man back line. And that's why you want to play a little bit more in the pockets, maybe use those inside channels. And I feel like in this one, you saw both Paul Rothrock not be as effective as he typically is, and Georgi Minoungou not be as effective as he typically is. And I think a lot of it had to do with the setup. And that's why I thought that you needed more from a pocket type winger. And that's not Paul Rothrock's forte. Paul Rothrock is a guy that's going to want to get behind the defense. He's going to give you a lot of that push on the outside, kind of hugging up against that outer bound line. And by him playing that left side, that per Brian Smetzer is more of his pocket winger side, I don't know if he was as effective as he wanted. Paul Rothrock tried with a lot of crosses, but they weren't very effective. I think that he got 1 of 6 when he came to his crosses. He wasn't really allowed to get inside the much as he wanted. He wasn't even able to cross the box necessarily in the particular dangerous manners that he typically does. So I do think that there was a lot of more needed from Albert and Petković, who once again is another okay performance, and okay just doesn't do it for this offense that depends so much on their pivots. And Kalani, who, he tried, he was really in there trying to do some of those Alex Roldan type movements when he does get in those inside channels with more of an underlap, but it just wasn't clinical enough. It wasn't sharp enough. And you need to be sharp when you have a team that is as good playing deep as this Minnesota team.
Rob says the draw was fine. It was up to Minnesota to come out and entertain their fans and snatch 3 points. They weren't interested in doing any of that, so we sat on the ball and kept it away from them. Yeah, Nico, were you surprised at all with how Minnesota United played it? You know, Rick Ramsey's not their coach anymore, but they, after getting 6-0'd by the Whitecaps, they came out at home and were basically, I think, saying to themselves, we're not going to get 6-0'd at home, and whatever means that we have to employ to not get 6-0'd, even if it's bringing back some of the Ramsey ball, we're going to do that. And you know, as we were complaining about that on the post-game live last night, because you know, it kind of felt like the playoffs last year. It was just like old times complaining about Ramsey balling Minnesota United. We already have at least one Minnesota United fan who crashed our comment section, which is par for the course. And they said something like, you know, keep crying. You're just mad that you can't score on it. And I read that and I was like, I mean, yeah, that is why I'm crying, but I also don't particularly like watching that. So I don't know. Did you think that they were going to mix it up a little bit, or because, you know, I thought the whole thing this year was they were trying to evolve past the Ramsey ball, but it seems like what's happened is they were kind of trying that, wasn't going that well, and then they got 6-0'd, and so now they're like back to their roots. Do you think that's a fair way to put it, or are we being like overly critical of their style and their tactics?
I mean, you can be overly critical, and that is yours and the audience's prerogative. If you don't like a certain particular type of soccer, shoot, say it loud, say it proud. But the reality for me is that, as someone who, you know, it's a little bit more involved, like within the coaching, and have been able to see the necessity of certain coaches go into a specific roster and go away from their own soccer module because of the way that the roster is structured. That's what I see here for Minnesota. You can want to play with the ball and want to be more offensive, but when your roster has specific characters of players that would benefit out of playing a specific style, which is the style that they were playing in, you got to play to their strength. And so when I look at this roster, I see what works, and it does feel like being a more pragmatic team would benefit this team to get some wins. And that's the coach's job, is just to get results. So whether that frustrates the opponent or not, it doesn't matter. Whether that entertains the fans or not, nobody's getting paid on entertainment. Everybody gets paid on results. And that's why I wasn't surprised that they were as deep as they were. Obviously, Brian wasn't either. I think they expected this game to be very cagey, and that's what happened here. The difference, and this is going to sound funny, because Ramsey, although he was playing more towards that against the run of play type of soccer, he looked more dangerous when he did get on the attack, because it was so well structured and it was so prepared. What I feel like Minnesota is now is that they're themselves having an issue of how they want to play, and so they're not as elite on the counter, and they're trying to defend, and it doesn't look as clear, and it doesn't look as elite as it did with Ramsey. But that's kind of the way they're able to get some points. So when you look at a team like Seattle that wants to play a certain way, that wants to get the ball wide, that maybe has been struggling to get their 9 involved, I just focus on that as a coach. And I think that they did that pretty well. I mean, Osaze touched the ball 14 times. And although I'll go back to the Sounders maybe not having those guys that can get Osaze involved on the field, I do think that there was a credit from the coaching staff in Minnesota saying, this is the way we want to play. We're going to frustrate this team, and we're going to get on the attack. And they did that a couple of times, where if it's not for that, you know, maybe strong touch that goes over Andrew Thomas, and then Tino Lopez kind of getting that ball out, that could have been a goal. When James Rodriguez came on the field playing more of that playmaker 10 for this team, he created a couple of moments. They pushed Seattle a bit back. I think if those moments happen, that's what Minnesota wanted. We're going to play good defense, and in a couple of moments on the ball, we're going to get the result, and then we're definitely parking the bus because they're looking for some confidence. They're looking for a win. So I totally understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. They got to play however they think they need to play to get results, I guess. I still think that coming out there and playing at home like you would play on the road, if that's what you think is best for you to get a result in this given moment, have at it, knock yourself out. I'm frankly more on Rob's page where if they want to do that in this situation and kind of just give Seattle the 0-0, Seattle's in the middle of crazy fixture congestion and balancing CCC. And, you got to be able to grind results on the road in situations like that. And part of that is grinding out ugly draws. So, hey, I'll take it from that perspective. But I don't know. I feel like if you're talking about the future prospects of Minnesota United, at some point, you're going to have to learn how to play with the ball. But, yesterday was not that day. And we'll see if it ever becomes that day. I will say, like you alluded to be fair, I thought they looked quite a bit better after James came on. What did you think of James? Your guy, your boy. He got out there. And we've been kind of skeptical, I would say, Noah and I, of the James thing on this show. He is 34. I don't think when I was looking at his track record in Liga MX before he came over here, it was fine. It was solid, but it wasn't incredible. I wasn't looking at it like, wow, this guy's about to light MLS on fire. And it also it kind of felt like we've been talking about it, how it feels like a fitness stop. Like he's just trying to get his cardio up before he goes and plays for Colombia at the World Cup. So I still think there might be truth to all of that, but if I'm being fair about it, and I look at how he actually played yesterday, he generated 2 really good chances for them. Their best 2 chances of the game came through him after he came on the field. And overall, I would say that I was kind of surprised by how both he and Timo Werner looked, just as far as motivation and buy-in, like so far. Those are 2 guys that I questioned with that. Like Timo Werner, it felt like, all right, your career's kind of stalled. You're trying to resuscitate it. How bought in are you really going to be? I thought he looked pretty motivated and bought in against Seattle. And then James, he generated a couple of good chances. And also, he was he was getting animated with the body language a couple times. It looked like he looked like he cared about being out there. I don't know if he actually did, but he kind of looked like he did. So, but yeah, what did you think of James? He looked better than I thought.
No, he looked the part. He looked like James at the club level. Look, James is always going to be the GOAT for Colombians, and I heard from a lot of my Colombian fellas when I criticized a lot of the Minnesota United acquisition of James Rodriguez. And I mean, everything I said has kind of come to fruition, right? I mean, James has played 40 minutes since he was signed. Hasn't necessarily been a player that's been influential. I mean, he came in a cameo in a 6-0 game that was well over. He comes in this one. He does some things. He's a very talented player, and his legacy is always going to go through the national team level, although he had a very successful club career to a certain point. But the truth of the matter is that as soon as he came into MLS, you knew what you were going to get out of him, and you were understand that his objective was always going to be getting to the World Cup healthy, being able to play that World Cup with Colombia. He's close to retirement, to be honest. I don't see James going too many years because he struggles so hard to stay in a specific club, and he is difficult for him to, I don't know if he's get motivated or be as consistent as he is at the national team level. So, as I mentioned, when I heard that he was coming to MLS, he's going to have big games. He's going to start 2-3 games where you're like, man, this guy is unreal. Cannot believe that Minnesota had this player. But it's going to be 3 games out of 32 40 game season, all comms or whatever, that it's just not enough of what you're getting out of that brilliant player. But specifically in this game, he came in and was James Rodriguez with the attitude, with the presence, with the through balls, a couple of dangerous set pieces. And the more you give him minutes on the field, the more you're going to see that. He's going to be a guy that's going to have a couple of bangers from mid-range. He's going to have maybe at least one free kick that he puts away. He's going to have a couple of moments where he's just putting balls on a dime, and maybe Jaboa gets a score. So he looked the part in this particular game. He had a couple of moments, just not enough minutes for him to maybe put his stamp on the game, but you could tell how the game changed as soon as he came on the field. The Sounders also did a good job at just having a lot of numbers back, not allowing Jaboa to get going. I thought that they also did a good job in Pereira. So for what it was, James did create some problems, but nothing that the Sounders couldn't handle.
Nico, before we get into our position group grades and team grades here, let's do a little bit of Albert Rusnak discourse, because that has come back to the forefront over the last few weeks. The brigade is out in full force I think over kind of his form over the last 2 or 3 games. Now, I think we all generally in our little orbit like Albert Rusnak as a DP. We think he's been a good to sometimes great, honestly, DP for this team. But, I will say there have been multiple instances over the last 2-3 games where he's kind of been killing me. Like there was the wide ass open shot in Vancouver where he could have put the series away in like the 3rd or 4th minute. There was a bad giveaway that I think might have led to a goal. There was a couple other instances that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head where I was temple massaging, which I think is, it's pretty out of character. We really have not talked about Albert Rusnak in this kind of red hot discourse kind of way in a while, which I think that's kind of nice. Like, that's kind of what I like about him, is I feel like, especially over the last year or so, like, you just don't have to worry about him. He's going to give you his production. He's a guy that's going to get you 10 and 10 every year. And God knows, on a team that has as many injuries to designated players as this team does, at least he plays every week. But I was doing a little thought exercise last night, Nico, and it got to the point where I think I have to do an entirely separate show on this, so we don't need to get into the nitty gritty of this. But I was just looking at his stat sheet production compared to some of the other DPs in the league right now that are at his position, just because I wanted to get a gauge on how it compared relative to those other guys. Because for me, in this whole thing, the number one thing that I judge a DP number 10 on is stat sheet production. I realize stats aren't everything, and there's more to the game than just your stats. But like, when you are a DP centerpiece number 10 attacker, I think at least baseline number one thing is you got to be producing on the stat sheet. Coaches can talk about the all-around game, and he brings leadership and he brings this and that, but if you're not scoring goals and getting assists, then that's an issue from a DP spot. And obviously Seattle's got multiple injuries to DPs right now where they're not getting anything from those spots. But I was just looking at Rusnak compared to some of these other guys. His numbers for his career: 79 goals, 56 assists in 315 games. He's played 315 MLS games between Seattle and Real Salt Lake. So he's been at it for a minute now. 79 goals, 56 assists in 315 games. 37 goals and 27 assists in 169 games if you want to just look at his Seattle production. So I was looking at it compared to guys like Evander, Haney Mukhtar, Ryan Gauld, Christian Espinoza, David DaCosta. That's just like the first few names on my list here. And like I said, I want to do a whole show where I actually go through and talk about how he compares to those guys. But what I found is that there are a handful of these guys who have higher volume stat sheet production than he does, like Haney Mukhtar and Denny Bouanga. Other than that, he compares pretty favorably. He's at least in the same ballpark or better than a lot of the other guys. So that's just, data point number one that I was looking at when I was trying to assess, are they really getting their money's worth? Have they been getting their money's worth out of Albert Rusnak purely statistically? Okay. Like, I understand the pivot argument is that he's lazy or whatever, but put that aside for a second and just looking at the at the stats, 37 goals, 27 assists, and 169 games for this team, which as I found was pretty much similar or better than a lot of the guys that we're judging him against. But then also there are a few guys that do produce at a higher volume than he does. So anyway, Nico, I guess my question is, I think either way, we can all agree this has not been the greatest 2-3 game stretch for Albert Rusnak, but for now, I'm kind of considering it a blip on an otherwise really productive run with this team. And like, you know, again, consistency, durability, and availability, that's he at least has been providing that. Okay. So I will say that. But Nico, what do you think of Albert Rusnak's form right now? Are you concerned about Albert Rusnak? Because for me, when I look at it, I'm actually really not concerned about this right now, but the brigade is out. Some people are concerned about this. What do you think?
I'm not concerned. Albert Rusnak has never been a player that I thought was gonna take over the team, put the team on his shoulders. He's always going to be a DP that his biggest value is being another amplifier on the team. And the best thing about Albert is that he is pretty open about it. He's never said, this is my team, I'm the face of the franchise. He is a player that does his job very well. He's a connector. He's going to get people involved, but he needs that co-stellar group around him. And that's why it's not hard to see the games where he does perform at a top level when he does have those guys around him. So, you know, he's 31, going to be 32. Is his overall performance going to start to drop? Sure. I mean, Father Time is undefeated. He's going to, that's the whole point with Albert Rusnak, is that at some point, once this contract is up, I would not mind having him back as long as it's not a DP contract. And so particularly to this game, and maybe what we've seen this season, is that he's had moments, and that miss in Spokane, that's a bad miss. And he's had a couple of other misses where he knows that he wants it back. Is that particularly his game? I mean, he does a great job at running late into the box and put himself in those positions. But, you know, I don't think any of us have thought about Albert Rusnak, this guy is going to put every single ball away. His best ability is being a guy that is giving you creative moments. And in this new role that he has this year, you know, having the ability to have another creative player like Jesus Ferreira, I think he gives them more of those moments. And in this particular game, by him being on his own, I think he might have created a couple of chances and maybe put 3 or 4 through balls that were interesting. But just not having that other partnership next to him does hinder his game. It does handicap him. And I know that's not what people want to hear when it comes to your DP, because your DP needs to do this, your DP needs to do that. But when you look at the numbers, you see what he's been able to do. So I'm not concerned. I think that Albert, if anything, is consistent with his play. I think that he's going to continue to get better. And once Jordan Morris comes back, which we got to see a cameo of Jordan Morris finally back from injury, I think that's going to help him even more, because there is a level of comfortness that I believe Albert gets by having a type of profile of striker that is in Jordan Morris, or that it was with Raul Ruiz, that I feel like is going to benefit him. So I'm not concerned. I think that the production has been as expected, and I do understand the criticism of wanting your DP to be a more influential player, but he just goes with his game. And if you followed him as long as we have, I don't think you're surprised at where he's at in game, 5 of MLS play. And I think that he's going to continue to get better as time goes along, and as he gets those partnerships on the field. The Jesus Ferreira on the right, Jordan Morris up top. A guy like Paul Arriola, I feel like goes really well with a guy like Albert Rusnak. Even at times when you get Paulie on the left, I feel like that works a little bit better with Albert Rusnak, particularly because Albert does gravitate to that left pocket. That's where he's supposed to be. And I feel like in this particular game, he just didn't have a lot of that. And you can tell the difference of those games where he doesn't have those partnerships in the field. But I'm not concerned. I think that he'll be all right.
James coming in with the $2. He says career 4 goals, 1 PK, and 0 primary assists in the playoffs. I thought he was good in the playoffs last year. I don't know. Maybe you remember that differently. I thought the goal that he scored in Minnesota in the last game of the season was one of the best goals anyone on the team scored all year. And I really thought the whole offense after they brought Moose on in the playoffs last year looked a lot better. I thought Rusnak looked a lot better, and the team ended up scoring 7 goals. Rusnak scored 1 of them. So the idea that he like ghosted in the playoffs, I don't think I agree with that.
Yeah.
And then real quick, Gianni says highest paid player on a team should probably be able to put a team on their back from time to time. I do think there have been periods of time where he has put the team on his back. I was looking when I was going through his numbers and his career. The best season he's had for this team, I think, was 2024. He had 12 goals, 16 primary assists, all comps that year. And I don't again, maybe this is something that I just remember differently than some people, but 2024, that team had nothing going on offense until Albert Rusnak and Jordan Morris kind of started doing this Batman and Robin thing. They had a really good 1-2 punch going. This was like the early Lobbing Scorchers days, I remember, because we were talking about how much the offense was struggling, and then Albert and Jordan got hot. And really, I remember we were doing content about how they were like the hottest 1-2 punch in the league type stuff. And he was on fire at that time. Like he was you can go back and look at the game logs of 2024 and you'll see that he was carrying the team. And 12 goals, 16 primary assists is, 28 goal contributions, all comps pushing 30. That's where you want your DP to be at. And then last year he had 14 goals, 9 primary assists. And I think there were periods of that season too, where he was very, very, at least central to the success that the team was having. So I don't know. That's kind of just how I see it. Do you have any thoughts on that, Nico?
Yeah. The reality is that you guys are throwing numbers at each other. And the thing about numbers is that you could see them and you could almost tilt them any way that you want for the most part, not all the time. So
I think goals and assists are pretty clear. They're pretty clear cut.
But it's not though, because you can go with stats as they are, but when it comes to you putting the team on your back, there is a level of like, I've never looked at Albert and seen a Nico Lodero type of performance or season where it's not just about the stats, because there probably is a level of stats that are better on Albert than do on Nico, but Nico's ability to just influence the game in other aspects and really put the team on his back and do certain things on the ball and really, his first season with the Sounders, Nikola Petković, where he just kind of broke the mold and he put that team on his back in the playoffs and everything that he did, it feels different. And for someone like me that is all about the eye test, I think it's a lot easier to see it, because if you go back and you look at stats, you can go back and forth on things. And, that whole thing about the playoffs with James loves the stats and he uses them to his advantage. But I fall in the middle. I don't think that it's fair to look at those stats and say that Albert Rusnak has been a 0 when it comes to playoff time or when it comes to big performances, even going back to the Concacaf Champions League tournament.
I forgot to mention that, but he was
when he played the 8.
He was playing the 8 and was a big reason that they won CCL that year. The goal he scored in the NYC series was one of the biggest goals of that whole tournament, I would argue.
So that's exactly it, right? And you're not going to see the stats particularly for that tournament, but he was a huge part of it, helping out Nico, helping out Obed, Christian. Those are the things that, I feel like Albert a lot of times gets wrongfully criticized for. And now I wouldn't go on the other side either and say that he's been this player that just put the team on his back, but he has had great stats. And that is part of what he does, because he is a productive player and he does his job adequately. And he does it beyond of what most players do it on that particular position. And that's the DP level stuff. The DP level stuff is for a lot of that added clinical moments that you do have in a lot of times, but it's not all of it. So going to Albert Rusnak right now, has that maybe took a little bit of a hit? It's probably going to. If you look at him right now and the issues that I see so far in 2026. Set pieces haven't been really good. I mean, specifically for this Minnesota game, I mean, they were bad. I mean, my dad was watching the game with me, and he was upset. Like, what are we doing? What are they doing? So set pieces were pretty bad in this one. So there is room to criticize certain things, but anytime that we have these hyperbolic takes, in my opinion, I mean, because everybody can have opinions, but I don't like hyperbolic takes because of that. I think that Albert Rusnak has been a well-deserved DP. I think that numbers are part of it. I think that the eye test and some of the other things that he does for the teams are fitting of that DP level. And now moving forward, you are having to assess that. But I think that both of you guys are throwing numbers, and you could see both sides of the coin, which to me just says that the reality is somewhere in the middle, maybe in the middle, tilting towards you, Ari, because I do think that Albert Rusnak has been a really good player for this franchise.
Yeah, I guess I just kind of continue to see it as a non-issue, but that's just me.
It's not an issue. I don't think
like. I mean, yeah, like, you know, at least he's playing. You know, that's more than can be said for some of the other DPs on this team. So, yeah, but that, I mean, you know, everyone's got their own opinion,
and everybody can have bad games. Ari, I mean, that's the other part. You know, in Spanish we use this term resultadista, which is just doing takes on just specific moments and results, kind of being a slave of the moment, of you know, just kind of, oh, if Albert puts that away, he's the best soccer player on the planet. Oh, if Albert doesn't put that away, he's the worst. Well, not necessarily. I think that's why there's a body of work that goes to things, and I do believe that there's going to be moments just like the one you had in Spokane where Albert's going to put that ball away. So you know, in this particular game against Minnesota, he had that one where he tries to flick it to Jordan and he kind of falls on him and he just kind of smacks it looking for something. If he puts that away, we're talking about Albert just being this savior of the game. And that's why I don't like to just completely be caught up on a specific moment, a specific goal. And it's more about the body of work. And I like Albert Rusnak's body of work. I really do.
Yeah, the one that I forgot to mention earlier was the one in San Jose where the Cody Baker goal got waved off because he didn't get back on side. So no, I mean, there were a couple of those moments where I was like, Bert, killing me. But I'm not worried about him. I'm really not. Bad Sequel's coming in with the $1.99, and he wants to know, Nico, what is your hesitancy on Nikola Petković? Why don't you take this one, and then we'll do these grades to close it out.
Well, I have a lot of them. Let's start with the number one, and it's the one that I'm looking at, and has Petković showed me enough to decide whether for better or for worse, I would be willing to keep him at his price tag? And the answer is yes. I've seen enough to say that he's not worth the price tag that he came with. And I don't mean what the Sounders are paying right now, because they got him on basically a free, right? It's like a free rental, but what he would be worth, right? Or you know, having a player let's put him at a high TAM level. I wouldn't pay necessarily. I've seen enough to feel comfortable that a Peter Kingston, a Hassani Dotson, a Snyder Burnell absolutely are going to be better options there. So I've seen enough for that. But particularly in his game, I just think that he's very inconsistent. And even when Brian is saying that he had this great game and all of these things right after the post game, I don't see it. I really don't. I think that he was fine, and he opens the ball up well, and he distributes pretty decently, but he's also dribbling right into pressure so many times, silly yellow cards and fouls where they don't need to be. There's also bad passing moments that he is hindering, transition moments. I mean, there was a play that is a turnover by him in the right before the halftime, the first 45 minutes, where he just dribbles straight into pressure. He creates a moment for Minnesota to have an opportunity, and it's just those very simple, almost naive moments on the ball that I just question. A lot of his passing at times is forceful, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I don't want to sound inconsistent, because there are those things that I value when it comes to Jesus Ferreira, but it's where in the field you're trying to put those balls through, where if you're a guy playing at center midfield a little bit deeper and you have a bad turnover, you're way more vulnerable than you are if you're higher up the field and you give away that ball. So for this specific system, I think that the dribbling isn't quite there. The passing is okay. The defensive effort and defensive productivity, effectiveness is a better word. It's not really there. So I just don't see it. I think it's okay, and that's where I will leave it. I think he's an okay player. I just don't know if he's a guy that I would, in my opinion, rank higher than Snyder B, and certainly not Peter Kingston of what I've seen so far. I mean, it just looks better. Or Hassani Dotson for that. Hassani Dotson has a particular set of skills that elevate him to a certain point that you're like, hey, if you need that guy to be strong and come in with challenges and do this and that, I feel like you bring him in. I just don't know if Petković has enough of that special qualities to, feel like I want to keep him on this roster. But he's okay.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm higher on Petković than you are so far. I think I really like what I've seen with the dime dishing. I think his way of dime dishing is sort of unique to what Seattle has at that position. I really like the long passing, and I like how he can switch the point of attack. And I think that when he has hit these through balls, it's looked pretty good. I just think he's a really good facilitator, and I do think that he doesn't really fit the profile of that position that you usually see Brian Schmetzer like. Schmetzer likes the Christian Roldan, Hassani Dotson, Snyder B type at that spot. But I do think there could be some value that we find in having a guy who has his attributes as a facilitator that I think are a little different than the other guys. So I think, his vision and his passing, I think, have been really good, better than I expected. And there is stuff with the sort of all-around game that you're talking about that I agree you would like to see get honed and get better. But I've admittedly been kind of grading it on a curve because I had pretty low expectations for the signing. It just seemed like he was a Crown Legacy FC cast off. And if there's a team that's willing to make an interleague loan for a guy that they spent that much money on, I'm kind of raising my eyebrows. There's got to be
and I see why. Yeah,
there's some kind of reason for that. And I think you do see why, but I think you also I think you've seen evidence that they might have made like a bad call by doing that, and that Seattle could have been right that if we
not on that salary.
There, yeah, well, that's what
I mean. You had this exact same thing in Danny Leyva for half that price, if not more than half that price. And that's the irony of it, that Brian wouldn't play Danny Leyva as much because he was Petković. I mean, it's wild to me. There's a certain irony that all these things that you're just talking about, him being a good distributor, moving the ball, that was Danny Leyva. And you always talked about lack of dynamism and lack of defending. And Petković definitely doesn't have that. I would argue that the Danny Leyva that left here was a more dynamic, better player than Petković. So
it's not a bad take. But I still maintain that I think he's been quite a bit better than I expected, but we'll see what happens. Like, it seems like this is enough of an investment U22 spot that looks like they're going to give him some run. And, I don't think Schmetz would be giving him run if he didn't like what he was seeing. So we'll see what happens with it. But, all right, Nico, to close it out here this morning, we got about like 20-30-ish minutes left. Let's get into our 2026 grades for the Seattle Sounders so far this season. The Seattle Sounders, through 7 matches, all competitions, going into their bye week. They are at 5 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw record, 10 goals scored, 3 goals against for a +7. And they are also into the Concacaf Champions Cup quarterfinals, beat Vancouver Whitecaps 5-1 on aggregate. So we're gonna grade the totality of that body of work so far. And the first thing I want to do, Nico, is just go through the position groups, and we're gonna give them just letter grades for how we think they've been performing so far through the season. And again, this is not just league play or just CCC. I'm taking all 7 all competition games into account with these grades. So Nico, let's get to it, and we're going to start with the strikers, the number 9 group. Let's give them a letter grade. It's been the Osaze de Rosario, Danny Musovski show so far. Jordan Morris obviously gets injured in the season opener, just got back in the last game at Minnesota, so he hasn't really been in the mix. Osaze has been the starter. He won the starting job in preseason, and they have been running him at the start of pretty much all these games. And Moose was the super sub for most of this time. Now he's off with North Macedonia, but you had Moose get in there in the last Vancouver game in CCC. He scored a goal. Nico, what do you think of how the strikers have looked so far? If you had to give them a letter grade, what would you give them?
I think that's so.
One.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one because I don't want to be unfair. And you know, I mentioned this yesterday on another show, and there is a level of quality that I really appreciate about Osaze. That, you know, his strength, his fortitude, you know, that yellow that he forces in against Vancouver, like 2 minutes in, a lot of that hold up play that he does. I feel like it's moments from being unlocked. Like he wants to unlock the wingers, and it's almost there, but it isn't either. A pass gets intercepted, or maybe he misses a read. But then he's had other moments where he's slipped players too and created if not an immediate goal, he created a transition moment that led to a goal. And that I can appreciate. I appreciate the pressing. I appreciate the dual winning. I appreciate all of these things that he does. So because of it, and even Danny Musovski, for what he does come in and he almost monitors his energy to only particularly put all his strength into running into a specific ball or pressing when he feels an opportunity or goal. There's a quality level of that I appreciate. So I'm going to leave it at a C minus.
That's pretty bad. That's bad.
Well, let's leave it at a C. Let's leave it as a solid C. And I only say that because obviously what you want out of your strikers is at least some productivity on goals, being goal dangerous, creating more shots, creating more opportunities, and even in a system that maybe you're doing a lot more of that hold up play. I wanted to see more engagement and better quality chances. So I'm going to leave it at a solid C. Maybe C minus is too rough. Yeah, let's leave it at a solid C.
Yeah, I was gonna say like B minus, and I won't argue with a C. I think that is about right. I think with Osaze, the preseason was honestly so electric. Like, remember how dominant he was? He was absolutely taking over those games. And, you know, we gave all the necessary caveats at the time. We said it's preseason. This isn't necessarily guaranteed to translate, but it was hard not to get really excited about what the potential could be. And the fact that they were running him as the starter going into the season made me feel like, all right, there's like an actual chance for a real breakout here, and that hasn't happened yet. I do think Osaze is, like you said, he's been doing a lot of good stuff. Like, I do think so. I think he's a good all-around player, and he brings a lot of hold-up play, you know, with the pressing and the link-up play that you mentioned, where he starts the sequence that leads to a goal against Colorado. So I give him credit for that. Like, it's not like he's been bad or a liability out there. I think some people might say that he was in the second Vancouver game, but I think on the whole, it's not like he's been bad or detracting from the team. It just hasn't popped like it looked like it might in preseason. So that's why I wouldn't give the group an A, because also with Moose, you have Moose who's kind of getting into the mix, like as the super sub, and he has the one goal at Vancouver. He did. I think Moose. I've been saying I think Moose has been playing well so far too, as far as what Moose does with his positioning and getting in those poacher spots. You know, he had the near equalizer at Real Salt Lake that obviously it got disallowed, but I think that was still an example of Moose doing the stuff that made him so effective last year. So there's been some good stuff in there, but you know, at the end of the day, I mean, you got one goal between the two of them. So you need more goal production from that spot. And that's partially why I think it's good. It's great to see Jordan Morris coming back, because I do think I trust him to give that. And sort of like I've been kind of talking about him as he's the combination of Osaze and Moose, which is what they need from that spot right now. So I think that's exciting. And I think Osaze and Danny have done a solid job holding it down. They've done a solid enough job to where the team's 5-1-1 all comps, and they have scored 10 goals. Like someone in chat was saying that Seattle's 23rd in the league in goals scored right now, but that's why I'm looking at all comps, because I think that's what I'm judging them off of, because I think CCC is the most important thing going on right now. And they got 5 goals in the Vancouver series, and that's all I could ask for. 5 goals against that Vancouver team. So if you look at their record and their stats and attacking numbers with CCC factored in there, it looks a lot better. So you could say like that doesn't count and that's skewing it, but I disagree. Like I think you have to count that. CCC is really important right now. And a couple of these league games, it's like, you know, it's the road show. They've been on the road playing rotated lineups with 27 injuries. So I give them credit for grinding out the 1-0s, which they weren't out there lighting it up, scoring goals, looking like the Harlem Globetrotters, but they got the results. They got a couple of road wins, and they scored the goals that they needed to. So I think that's something that I see actually as a positive sign, even though you would like to see them lighten up the scoreboard a little more. But
no, but that's a good point though, Ari, and I'll finish with that. I think that the reason now that we're kind of talking back and forth about it, the biggest conclusion about why I would give them a C grade is because now you had 2 guys battling this position for 7 games, and all Jordan Morris has to do is come in and do something just a little bit better, and he's going to get the position. So, you know, neither guy won the job when they had the job open. And that to me is the conclusion that you need to have. Neither guy won the job. And whether, you know, one is missing a little bit of what the other is giving you, because I do feel like Danny Wisowski has forced more saves. He's looked a lot more dangerous in the box. And on the opposite end, Osaze has done a lot of other stuff off that 18 and being more of a connector and done more of that hold up play. So yeah, it's the inconsistency of both that is going to allow, in my opinion, Jordan Morris to just walk in and take the job.
Nico, let's move on to the attacking midfielders. So you got Albert, you got the Pauls, you got Georgi. I think that's pretty much the main group that we're talking about here. For me, I really like, Jesus Ferreira too as well. So for me, I feel like there's individual guys in this group that deserve A's, A pluses, like Paul Rothrock, A plus so far. Paul Arriola, he's just coming back from injury, but he looked fantastic in the first leg in Vancouver. I would give him an A so far for how he played just in that game, especially, you know, just coming off an ACL. For him to have a game like that, I thought that was great. We just talked about Albert. I would probably put his individual grade more in the C range so far, with what we talked about with some of the unfortunate mishaps that have occurred over the last 2-3 games. He did have a fantastic game in the season opener against Colorado. So I think that's fair to point out. That Rapids team also, people were just kind of taking it as a given that game doesn't count because it's the Rapids. And we talked about how they looked pretty bad in that game. They've actually looked kind of good since then, Nico. They've won 3 games and they've looked like a team. They look like a team that's going to make the playoffs this year. So I think you could argue that Rusnak's goal contributions in that first game actually do count. He contributed on both the goals that ended up being the difference in the game. But you know, he's had a couple mishaps the last 2-3 games. So maybe that bumps the total grade down a little bit. But like the Pauls, I give an A. And Jesus, I give an absolute A plus. Like I think he's been absolutely excellent so far. He's been getting on the stat sheet. I do think when I was looking at the totality of Albert's attacking numbers, but I looked at Jesus as well, and he has a bunch of assists now at this point. I do think that it would be nice if they could get him scoring at least kind of closer to the clip that he was at FC Dallas. I get that his role is more of a playmaker on this team, but the fact that he's sitting on no goals and only has 5 goals in 55 games, all comps, maybe you could dock him a little bit for that. But I think he's been so elite as a playmaker so far, and that's kind of what his role is in the system on this team right now. I give him an A. So honestly, if you want to say B plus for this group because of Albert's slow start, I think that's about fair. But I think most of these guys that have been supposed to carry the load, like the wingers, I think you got to give them an A. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a tough one in the positive. My first thought is A, because they have been running the show. Without this group, the Sounders are going nowhere this season. They at least on the offensive end and even defensive end, I feel like they've done a really good job at pressing those particular triggers that the Sounders have been so very good at creating opportunities. And, with Brian Smetzer, you always defend from top to bottom. Everybody, including Albert Rusnak, have been better at just being very active and defending and forcing teams into turnovers. So you mentioned Jesus Ferreira. I think that he has been an A-plus type of guy when he comes to this group, because of everything, the passing and distribution, the opportunities he creates, the defensive effort. I mean, just in this game against Minnesota, he comes in and immediately picks up a ball and defends and presses and gets a turnover and creates a moment of transition. Now, he wasn't perfect in this one. I don't think he's a sub-type player, and you could see that he came in a little cold. Some of his passing wasn't great, and I think I attribute that to when he came into the game. But that mentality, he is without a doubt the most influential attacker that the Sounders have right now, both creativeness and passing wise. So for me, I'm gonna give him a B plus, and only because maybe a couple more goals from this group, and we're talking differently about some of the lack of goal from those striker positions. Albert Rusnak has had the most. He leads the. Again, I'm not a stats guy, but apparently he leads the team on target opportunities. So he's created chances. He's there. He's coming in where he needs to be. They just haven't been able to finish. I think if Albert puts at least two of those opportunities away, easy opportunities that he's had, I'm giving them an A. But I'm going to give it a B plus. I also want to co-sign what you said about Paul Arriola. I think that he's looked excellent. I think that he's going to be a guy that could provide you a lot of positive moments on offense. And Paul Rothrock, who, whether it's off the bench or starting, he has the ability to change the game. He's a game changer. He really is, and he needs to be given that attribute. Let's give him due flowers, because he is a guy that's come in for this team and just been a difference maker. So, because of that, I would agree that maybe not an A for me, but a B plus is where I'll leave it.
Gianni's saying that Jesus' secondary assist against the Rapids doesn't count, but if you can take away the secondary assist against the Rapids, and he's still got 4 or 5 primary. He has a lot of primary assists this year. So like I've been excited to see that it's actually paying off on the stat sheet so far this year more than it did last year. He only has 1 primary or 1 secondary assist this year. He's definitely not inflating or merchanting his total number off of that. And so I think that he's off to a good start too. Like, you always talk about the eye test. I think like if you look at the Ferreira eye test, man, like his chance generation, I think has been very, very good so far. And I love to see it. I hope he can keep doing that. I do think that at some point they got to get him scoring more. Like he shouldn't be scoring not at all. This is a dude that has, I was looking this up last night, 60 MLS goals to his name. So I think that is something that I want to see, but I have been very encouraged and excited by what we're seeing from him as a playmaker and a facilitator. All right.
And
Nico,
let me just tell that comment that is just as when, let's say, Obed Vargas was getting all those goals of deflections. Like, do those not count? Because I mean,
yeah, no, those
you got to create.
You
got to create those opportunities, right? You got to be able to shoot to put the ball in the back of the net. Same thing as a passer. That's why I think he's the most daring passer in the final third, and that creates opportunities for this team because he's willing to thread the needle. He's willing to put those passes in. So whether it deflected or not, that is absolutely an assist because you are willingly putting the ball into that particular space to create that opportunity. So completely disagree, but opinions are like gnosis. We all have one, and that's totally all right. But I think it is impossible to deny that Jesus Ferreira has been the most influential
The secondary assist against the Rapids was 4D chess, guys. I already broke this down. He intentionally missed Rothrock and made him run into the ad board so the defense would let up, and that's what gave Rothrock the space to get in the assist to Rusnak. That's called soccer IQ. But all right, Nico, let's move on to the CDMs. You got the Christian Roldan, Snyder B, Nikola Petković, Hassani Dotson group here. Maybe throw Pete Kingston in there with his emergence, and it seems like that's where they were playing him. Hassani Dotson obviously has been in concussion protocol. I think you could say that maybe he got off to a bit of an uneven start. There's like the giveaway, right, that led to the goal in Salt Lake. It kind of looked like he wasn't fully acclimated yet. But man, I feel like I would give these guys an A. I think Christian's an A as always. Snyder B, I mean, A+. Love what I'm seeing so far. And I'm higher on Petković than you are so far as well. So I think I give positive weight to the Petković thing because I kind of expected that to be a 0. And I think he's actually been pretty good so far. And I think that there's potential for growth there as well. So I continue to be happy with this group. I want to see Hassani get integrated more and just kind of look more acclimated once he is back from concussion protocol. That would be like the note here for this group. But I mean, Christian Roldan, I pretty much got no notes ever. I think he maybe the first couple games of the season wasn't full Christian yet, but I think like yesterday I thought was his best game. He's kind of looking back to that form. So I'm pretty happy with this group. I think I give him an A. Would you give him lower than an A?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with a B+, simply because I got to see somebody aside from Christian Roldan take over that other position. And as of right now, we haven't seen it. Snyder Burnell is the one we're all calling for, but that just necessarily hasn't been the product that we've seen out there just yet. I mean, obviously, Brian is doing a good job at rotating and trying to figure out what he has out of each and every single one of these midfielders. I think that Christian is a clear A. I think that Snyder Burnell, for the time that he's had, he's a clear A without a doubt. And then from there on, I think that we can go with B's and C's. Hassani, obviously not enough data there, not enough time that we've seen him to really grade him, but so far, a C+ maybe is where I would leave it at. I think Peter Kingston has been really, really good, but
A for Pete.
Well, yeah, but then you also got to take, his semester, I guess, if I was a teacher, he just came in. He's a transfer from another school that I'm just starting to see. So of course you got to see it in a bigger product. What I've seen so far is that he's really, really good. And again, I have him higher than Petković because of what he could provide and what I've seen from him. Some of those dimes, some of that effort, that coolness on the ball. He doesn't turn the ball over as much. I really like Peter Kingston, but I just don't think I'm ready to give all that many A's. I think I'm pretty hard on my A's. And the only reason why I give Snyder Burnell an A is because he has been head turning when he's been, and not like Peter hasn't in moments, but it feels like a more consistent product, right? And so that's why I think Snyder Burnell gets an A. So for me, overall, this whole group, not being high on Petković, all of that, I will give him a B+.
Looks like people are saying they feel like Christian has started the season kind of slow. What do you agree with that? I think it's definitely true in the first like 3-4 games of the year. There was more he had more like giveaways than usual, like in the RSL game. I think you could say that. And so I definitely
against
agree.
Vancouver too. The game away.
Maybe his individual grade would be more of like a B- so far by his standards, but like the standard he set is so high. The standard he set is the best player in the league at that position. So if he needs a few games to ramp up to that, if there's one guy on this team that's earned a mulligan on a little bit of a slow start, it's Christian Roldan. The guy plays every goddamn minute of every goddamn game for this team every single week, every single year. So I'll give him some grace on a slow start, especially because I do think I was thinking to myself during the Minnesota game yesterday, all right, looks more like Christian again. But if people want to say that it's been a B minus start to the year for him, I wouldn't necessarily argue with that.
It's a fair thought, but that's exactly what I was thinking, what you just mentioned. But I would add that you have to give him some grace because he's having to completely shift his role. He's trying to figure out the way he's got to act with certain players, and that can affect some of those things. So I would agree that he has been less accurate on the ball, and he's had some pretty bad games when it comes to turnovers and things like that. But the overall body of work, what he's doing is without Christian, you have no soliditude in that midfield. He is the motor, the engine that keeps that part of the field running. And if this team hasn't conceded a lot of goals, a lot of it starts with Christian Roldan's effort and what he does there at midfield, directing traffic, pushing back, doing all these things. So that's why I give him the particular A, but it's a fair criticism and observation.
On that note, Nico, let's grade the back line and the goalkeepers to close it out. What do you think of this defense so far? We're talking about Minoungou, Jackson. Yaimar is obviously injured right now, but he was the starter to begin the season. Alex Roldan, KKR, the whole gang. I mean, Nico, I think honestly, man, for me, like A+ for this group so far. This was the biggest area of improvement that we all, I think, wanted to see going into this season. This group gave up 48 goals last year. They got knocked out of the playoffs, not because they couldn't score goals, but because they couldn't stop giving up goals. So that needed to change this year. That needed to get better. That they needed to get back to the 2024 levels of defense. They needed to combine the 2024 defense with the 2025 offense. That's what they needed to do. And so far, I've loved how this defense is playing. They have been in very adverse situations. They've had a ton of injuries. There's been sequences of these games where there's been bad turnovers by the midfield or even by the back line, and they've been under a lot of pressure. There have been some good chances that they've arguably gotten away with. So you could say all that stuff, but the way that they're absorbing pressure and managing to keep these clean sheets, getting a couple of these road games to 1-0, and then actually being able to hold the lead and not concede the equalizer. God, that was music to my eyes to see that. Music to my eyes. It was just phenomenal to see them be able to actually close out these games with the lead and not give up the lead. And I'll say this too, man. I really think Jackson Reagan is leveling up and playing at a defender of the year caliber clip right now. I think he's going absolutely off. You know, I was talking to Michael McCall of AFTN a couple weeks ago about the Whitecaps before that series, and I was telling him what I was seeing from Sebastian Berhalter and how Berhalter came out this year kind of just with like playing like he had a point to prove, and he's just got this kind of crazy look in his eyes in these games where it looks like he's playing with a purpose and he's trying to show everyone that he's the best in the league at this position. I kind of feel like that's what the type of stuff that Jackson is on right now to start the season too. Like he's like flying around. He's jumping for every single header, clearing everything out of the box. He's throwing his body around, blocking shots off the goal line. He's playing CB at about as high level as you could hope for in MLS. So I think if he continues to play at this level and do the stuff he's doing out there, you're going to see him start getting those best 11 defender of the year type consideration. So great stuff from Jackson. And with the Yaimar injury and all the injuries that this team has had too, like having to play Alex out of position, I think KKR has been fantastic. So man, like I think this is the thing I'm happiest about, is the fact that I'm able to give this group an A or A+. What do you think?
Yeah, this group gets an A+, and it's on both sides of the ball. There hasn't been a game this season where we haven't talked about how many numbers the Sounders are putting behind the ball. And a lot of that has to do with the effort from this particular group. Set piece defending has been outstanding. I totally co-sign everything you said about Jackson Reagan on defense and offense, getting the ball out of the back, creating opportunities.
Minoungou, I forget. Sorry. I
being the guy that provides.
Shout out Minoungou. Minoungou's had a great start to the year too. Yeah,
and that's where I was going to go next is Captain Minoungou. He looks like a different person. His attitude, his performances, they just look better, and he has been outstanding I mean, he's a guy that you talk about defending, and a big shout, maybe getting a call up for defender of the year type stuff. I mean, he's been really, really good in the defensive components of that left back position. And then on offense, a guy like Kalani has been so good on offense, pushing forward, moving around, creating opportunities, creating goals. Alex Roldan, he's emergency defending has been outstanding all season long, being a guy that just got slotted in there at center back. Maybe that's not fair because he's done it before and he's worked at it pretty consistently, but he looks the par. Tino Lopez coming in and being a guy that immediately fits in, that saving opportunities, that to me looks like a guy that if Stu and Kim Ki-hee and all these guys don't get healthy quick, he could be still in their minutes and positions moving forward because he's been that good. So all in all, in every facet of the game, this defensive group has been phenomenal. So they definitely get an A+ for me. And let's not forget about the goalkeepers.
Yeah,
you got to give Andrew Thomas so much of a just high grade because of the saves that he's had this season when his number has been called. Such a great shot stopper, putting his body on the line. I think he's gotten a lot better at commanding the box when it comes to set pieces and corners and all of these things. I think he's gotten better at. Stefan Fry coming in, being that substitute for CCC. He's been phenomenal. The same guy that we're used to seeing that feels like he could, if you needed to, he was going to step in and do the job. He has not missed a beat. So for me, this whole group, center backs, left backs, full backs, all of it, goalkeepers, A+, no doubt.
Yeah, agreed on the goalkeepers. That was going to be the last one, but I would give them a solid A so far. Honestly, I think Andrew Thomas has looked pretty much like he did last year so far, which was the part of an MLS #1. He's made some crazy saves, and that's been good to see. And then Steph Fry, who I think we weren't necessarily sure how this was going to work between the two of them this year or how much Steph has left in the tank, but they chose to start him in CCC, which I was kind of like, all right, Schmetz is doing his I have two #1s thing, that's fine. But then Steph Fry came out in Vancouver and had a fantastic game. He had an absolutely insane save on Matias Laborda in that game. So the goalkeepers have it has not been a situation where the defense has never been under pressure and the goalkeepers don't have to do a lot. Like there's been a lot of situations where they've had to step up and make saves. In a couple cases, some pretty crazy fast reaction type saves, and they've been up for it. So that's been great to see. But all right, Nico, I got to get out of here. So we're going to call it right on that. Thank you all so much, as always, for tuning in to Lobbing Scorchers Kickoff. If you've not done so already, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Instagram, like, comment, subscribe, rate 5 stars, write us a review, lobbingscorchers.com, /sauce, lobbingscorchers.com/kit. And we're gonna be at it for bye-week coverage. We're gonna still be grinding. No Sounders game for a bit, but we might be doing some USMNT stuff and other league-wide coverage. I'll let you guys know what's up. But for now, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate y'all, and we'll see you next time. Love you.